This is the kind of thing that we need. We need that community to help the boys rise up. And when you have that kind of unconditional love and support, that foundation, you can reach and you can fail and know, okay, I'm gonna get back up and do the same thing.
What's up, Changemakers? Dia Nyarko here, co-founder and executive director of JLD Community Solutions, a nonprofit organization to empower young men of color. I am here at Bull City Ciderworks for the Lexington Book Festival reception, and it is sponsored by Davidson Local and Bull City Ciderworks. I'm sitting here with the award-winning Mr. Jeffrey Blount. Mr. Jeffrey Blount, I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Oh, Dia, I'm excited to be here with you. I really appreciate you having me on your program.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know when Antoinette reached out and asked me if I would like to take this chance to speak with you, I couldn't even believe it.
Well, it's an honor for me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. So I know that you're here for the Lexington Book Festival that's going to be happening this month. And so I just wanted to take a moment, learn a little bit about you, and also learn a little bit about the book that you have written, the award-winning Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way as well. So before I jump into the questions, though, I'd like to take a moment to share some of your accomplishments for those who may not be aware, if you've been under a rock, and are not aware of what Mr. Blount has achieved. So without further ado, Mr. Blount is an Emmy-Award winning television director. He has won an Emmy for directing NBC News' Election Night Live event in 2008. He had a 34-year career at NBC News, directed a decade of Meet the Press, The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, and other major special events. He's an author of 4 novels. The 2013 USA Best Book Award winning Almost Snow White, 2013 Reader's Favorite Book Award winning Hating Heidi Foster, 2019 Reader's Favorite Book Award winning and American Book Fest Best Book Award winning The Emancipation of Evan Walls, and also the 2024 National Indie Excellence Award winning and Next Generation Indie Book Award winning Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way. He's also written award-winning scripts for films and interactives displayed at the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, the Newseum, and others. He has received awards for documentary work, the Scene Golden Eagle Awards, the Muse Awards, and a Thea Award. He was inducted into the Virginia Communications Hall of Fame in 2016, and he has contributed to the HuffPost, published in the Washington Post, thegrill.com, and other publications. And last but not least, he has also served at the George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs for the Shapiro Fellow and Journalist in Residence program. I mean, so do you think you've done enough in your lifetime?
It's been a wonderful career, and I have just always been motivated to keep moving and keep learning and keep doing and keep contributing.
Absolutely.
So that's what it was all about.
Well, that actually segues perfectly into my first question, because the first thing that I wanted to learn is, out of all the things that you have accomplished, what do you think is one of your proudest things that you've accomplished in life, and what continues to motivate you in this season of your career?
I think when my legacy is set, I want my literary work to be the first thing people think of. And one of I think one of the most important moments is getting a letter from a young man who had written his essay to go to college, And he sent me his essay and told me that my book, The Emancipation of Evan Walls, had saved his life.
Wow.
And there's no amount of royalties that can match being able to touch a life in that way. So I would say that's probably the most special moment in my literary career for sure.
Wow, that is a huge just like accolade or something to know that something that you personally created made that kind of impact on another person. So amazing.
Yeah.
So my next question to you would be, speaking about, the young man you've impacted, I'm wondering, in building your career in television and as an author, have you faced challenges related to being a man of color, and what gave you the courage to persevere through those times, through those challenges?
I definitely had issues because of being a black man in America, and a black man in a corporate setting like in NBC News, and I have to say less so as an author. I think for me at least, and I'm only speaking about my experience, has been a very accepting space and very open space for the things that I want to do. Even when I'm writing about race, and even when I'm calling people out about things, book lovers and people around books tend to be open-minded and want to learn more. But for almost 20 years at NBC, I was the only African-American director for the whole network. So there was I felt a lot of pressure at times, particularly when I knew people were acting to take me out of my job, and even doing it in ways so they weren't even ashamed of the things that they were doing. But this is something I wanted. It was a job that I dreamed of, and I knew I could do it. On the first night that I directed the Today Show, I knew I was going to be the first black person to direct the Today Show.
Wow.
And that night I got a migraine, and because I was so worked up about doing this, knowing that if I messed up, it might be another 20 years before they let somebody else have a chance. So I directed the Today Show for the first time with a migraine.
Wow.
Because I was so worked up about that. So I was carrying all of that.
Yes.
And so yes, it was oftentimes a very difficult situation. But I do want to say, because I want people to know that there are allies and people who do see what you're going through, that I had fellow directors who are all white. And not one time in all of those times was I ever in a situation with the directors. It was always the people above us who were hiring where I wasn't supported.
I see.
And so, and in fact, one of my favorite friends, and he won't mind me saying his name was Brett Holy. He was the NBC Nightly News senior director at the time. And he called me and said, we just hired a new director and I'm sending him to Washington so you can give him the Washington Bureau tour and show him what you do. And it never occurred to me, all the other directors were white. And so when I went up to the lobby to meet the new director, it was a black guy. It was Steve. And so Brett knew that. He didn't say anything, but he knew what that was going to mean to me.
Yes.
And so Steve and I, became supporters for each other, and we both retired from the network, and we're still supporters for each other. But so it had its rough parts, but it also had its special parts.
That is awesome.
And I would do it again in a heartbeat. I love my career again.
Well, and it's individuals like yourself who paved the way so that other people have the opportunity to step into those same shoes. Yeah. And we have to give flowers for that, And I'm even wondering, because you were the first, if there was someone who opened the door of that opportunity for you, or were you just like, I'm going after this?
Well, I think it was a combination. I'm going after this. So there was our senior director in Washington was a guy who had a whole lot of fame in the business, had done a lot of incredible things. So I just marched into his office one day. He didn't know me, and introduced myself to him. And in the course of the conversation, he asked one of those questions that you always get asked in an interview: what do you see yourself doing? And I said, I see myself in your job.
I love it. I love the confidence.
Yeah, and then you know what? When he retired, guess who he recommended for his job?
You.
And I got
the one who barged into.
One who barged into his office. Yeah. Sometimes you have to believe in yourself.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to realize this is the moment.
Yes.
And if I don't do anything, I haven't gained anything. If I do something, I have a chance of gaining something.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Woo. Now that was, I'm like taking all of that in right now. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're here at the Lexington Book Festival, and you have a 2024 award-winning book, Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, before Antoinette reached out to me, I didn't get a chance to read the book before, but I did the clip notes, And in reading about, Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way, I learned that, this character, Mr. James Ferguson, apparently I think he was in politics or something.
He's a billionaire businessman, yeah. But in politics in the way that, he, like a lot of business people, they have to live in that political world in order to become successful.
Very, very much so.
Yeah,
We're seeing that very much now.
Yeah.
And apparently has a fall from grace.
Has a fall from grace, yes.
And has to kind of move away, kind of start over, make his life better. And in doing so, he reaches his hand back out to try to make his community better.
Right.
Some programs he provides. But he faces some adversity from some people from the top and others in his community. And so I'm wondering, what inspired you to write this book? And if there's any particular chapter or moment in the book that's like your favorite?
Well, dude, the inspiration is a multi-part inspiration. I had a conversation with my father about something. My father was at the time 94, and when he was starting this, so he's about to turn 99 next month. And so we were having a conversation about a boy who had gone to school when I was in second grade, and he was twice our age and had come into the second grade. And I found out when I was 15 that my parents had bought his clothes so he could come to school. They bought his books so he could come to school. And it led to a conversation about rural poverty and why my parents stepped forward to do what they did. Then my wife, who was a CNN correspondent, was down in Louisiana and ended up going into this community where there was this incredible kind of poverty, abject poverty, the kind of poverty we don't think exists in this country, but it really does exist. And so she called me to say basically that I can't believe that in our country with all the wealth we have that we have fellow citizens living like this.
Wow.
So that became the basis, and all my time in the news business, I had gathered issues that I cared about. Lack of education being number one, lack of equal housing, lack of health care, and basic government services that poor people just don't get because we feel it's okay to ignore them. So all those things got wrapped into what happened with my wife and what happened with my father, those conversations, those things came together. And then my daughter and I went to see Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative speak. And in the middle of his speech, he said, "We are all more than just the worst thing we've ever done."
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's a redemption piece right there.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, if I want to highlight all these issues, how do I get somebody there to highlight them? Or what if that character needed to find redemption? And I take him into this community and show everybody who reads it all these things that happen.
Wow.
But also show the beauty, because even in that poverty, people loved, people laughed. And so one of the nicest things, I would say the most important part of the book for me was Mr. Jimmy going, not even most important, but a joyous part for me, that was him having Christmas dinner with 92-year-old Miss Septima, who was one of his neighbors, and her church friends from the missionary circle.
Yes.
And everything gets laid out about who the community is, who he is, and the idea for Mr. Jimmy working to help change the community comes out of that dinner.
Wow.
And the most fun part was when Mr. Jimmy meets Miss Septima for the first time, and he tells her his name is James Henry Ferguson, and she looks at him and she says, "What your peoples call you?" And you know what? There's a whole lot of things in there. There's a whole lot of cultural stuff happening in there. I want to know who you really are.
Yes.
Yeah, don't give me that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that is the one thing I remember, hearing Michelle Obama say that one of her favorite things when she was First Lady and going through like the election period is seeing the best of America is when she actually got to sit down and talk to people.
Yes, yeah.
And, because every single person from the top, or even if you're living in a impoverished area,
right.
everybody has a story. Everybody has something that they can bring to the table,
and if we're open to hearing that story,
yes,
we can all learn.
Yes.
You know, everybody can teach us something. Sometimes we think, well, we have an education. I did all this stuff at NBC and all this stuff. Well, guess what? I can go, and if I go and talk to that person with an open heart, an open mind, I learned something too. I learned how to help myself and how to help them. And that's what happens with Mr. Jimmy.
Yes.
Because in the beginning of the book, one of the first things that happens is that there's a homeless woman outside of a post office, and he gives her what he has, but he basically breaks down crying in his car because he didn't have more to give her. So, you know, you realize she taught him something in that second about where his priorities needed to be. And so a lot of that happens in the book, and that's, you know, what I'm trying to do. I call it literary activism. I write for a reason, and for people to hear those issues and hopefully do something about them.
I love it. Hey, I learn from my 5-year-old all the time.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
So, you know, even in the book, like, you know, we talked about how he kind of faced some adversity from some people from the top. And I remember a trip that I took, you know, over to Ghana with my husband, and kind of seeing some things that should be changed, you know, and things like that, and thinking of like all these ideas that I love to do, and knowing that if you come in to try to help, there's some people at the top that might not want you to do that help because it might, you know, interfere with things that they get to have.
Right.
And so I'm wondering, even from like Mr. Jimmy's perspective, he come in, he's like, there's stuff I can do here to help. Why do you think that in situations where we might want to do good for the community, that we are met with that adversity sometimes?
Well, I think we're seeing that in our country right now.
Yes.
So Mr. Jimmy goes to Ham, Mississippi, and they don't want the diversity of thought that Mr. Jimmy has. They want to maintain the status quo, and they want to maintain the power structure that they have. And if they give to these people, and in this case, these people of color, these impoverished people, if we do something with them, what if they show us they're actually smart and can do something? It threatens the social fabric. So I wanted to show that, you know, and Mr. Jimmy does have to battle that. And I think it's an important part of the book for people to recognize that that's still, well, when I wrote it, I wanted to say people need to know it's still happening. Well, they can see it happening now. So it's,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's really, it's crucial to know that this even exists, because I know, you know, for some of us who are out here and we have a passion to help.
Right.
And you don't understand all of these little things that are weaved in this whole
That's right.
workings.
Right.
And then you find out like, wow.
Yeah.
This is really how this works.
And you find out that people will let other people suffer in order to get mine. And that is a large part of, again, what's happening now, and again, what's happening with Mr. Jimmy and what he learns. You know, he's a billionaire, but at one point in the book, one of the people said to him, he said, yeah, you got all this money, but this is Mississippi and you're black.
And that's it.
Yeah, so you might have all that money, but those two things that's a problem for you. But because Mr. Jimmy is educated, because Mr. Jimmy has his money, because Mr. Jimmy has contacts, in the end, he's not intimidated. And he does what he needs to do. And I believe that this book is a roadmap for all of us, but particularly those of us who've got a lot of money. So I love what Magic Johnson did when he moved into communities, and you know, he did the movie theaters and stuff like that. But you know, when you work at a movie theater, it's minimum wage job, but it's better than no job. So I compliment him, and I'm thankful to him for doing that. Mr. Jimmy's, and my thing is, I want to go into those neighborhoods and I want to look over here and see, as one character, this woman is an incredible baker and cook. And what if I just gave her the opportunity to have this little restaurant and see what happened? And I can do that for her. And she won't be making minimum wage. She'll be the boss and the owner. And she doesn't have to have a super education. When I was out talking to a bunch of high school kids, and I was telling them exactly this, and they were saying, oh, but that doesn't work. And I said, well, I want you to take your phones out. I know this is the first time you're going to tell somebody to tell you to do that. But take your phones out and Google this. How many CEOs of Fortune 500 companies did not get a college degree. They were blown away. And I said, well, what did they have? They had somebody who gave them direction, they had heart, they wanted to learn, and they were driven. So if Mr. Jimmy has the ability to put people, or if I have the ability, or any other folks out there who have money and influence, have the ability to take somebody and put them in a position where their gifts become a career for them, that's what we need to do. And I don't think we do that a lot.
I think Mr. Jimmy is a prime example of the either give a man a fish or teach the man how to fish.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So just to kind of pivot just a bit, I know in doing some research, I heard you talk about the importance of being open to creativity.
Yes.
Creativity helped you even to take all of those things those conversations that you had with your mom and,
That's right.
pull them all together. Your dad and, So I'm wondering, how would you encourage young men of color who feel limited by their circumstances to nurture that creativity that's within them and to still go forward and reach for their dreams?
First of all, there's two parts to that for me. And the first part doesn't have anything to do with the young men. The first part has to do with us, where they come from. So Stanford did a study a few years back, and black students who were getting into Stanford, they had good grades, they got into Stanford, but they were failing at a rate that white kids and Asian kids were not. Black kids were being dropped out. And so when they decided to do the study to figure out why, they figured out that black children were acting as individuals, whereas the white kids and the Asian kids created groups to lift each other up and support each other. So if one was weak on the other thing, they filled in and helped each other. But the black kids were like in their own rooms doing their own thing. Because for whatever reason, we're not, as a community, we're not bringing each other together in that way, and we're not sending them out into the only place we send them out like that is an athlete. They learn to be a teammate. They learn to support each other. But because in many cases we don't celebrate academic achievements the same way we do athletics. So you can go into many high schools, and in the lobby there'll be a big glass case of all of the athletic achievements. But you can have black students in there who are engineers, but you don't see that anywhere. And so without the great base of a community to come from, it's hard for an African American male to, and we're all African Americans, but we're speaking about the boys here, to make that leap on your own, because they're like the kids in Stanford. They're out there on their own trying to do their thing. So Mr. Jimmy even has something in his book where he says, from now on, in this church, whenever a baby is born, we're going to start a reading committee. So if the parents have working 2 jobs again, every day somebody from this church is going to read to that child until that child can read for themselves.
Wow.
This is the kind of thing that we need. We need that community to help the boys rise up. And when you have that kind of unconditional love and support, that foundation, you can reach. And you can fail and know, okay, I'm going to get back up and do the same thing. What do you hear the athletes say all the time? Well, when I lose, I go back and I get myself together and I go back. But we don't do that in the academic world. So I want the boys to know that they can do that too, that and the community needs to surround them and say, it's okay if you didn't make it this time over here. We're going to rally you over here. So you were trying to do this physics thing, it didn't work out. Well, guess what? Mr. Thompson over here, he went to Howard, and that's what he does. So we're going to hook you up with Mr. Thompson so he can work with you, and we need that. And then we can just say to the boys, you do your thing. But they'll never be able to do their thing unless we give them the support that other kids are getting.
Wow, that is such a good point to bring out. Because I do feel like I've seen even in my own life where you look around, as an African American. I was just talking to another African American female in nonprofit here in Lexington, and we were just talking about how it sometimes can feel isolating because you feel like you're doing things alone. You don't feel like you have everybody's doing something, but nobody said, hey, let me share with you the information that I've gained that can help you, because this might help you not to make the same mistake I did, or, but there's a lot of gatekeeping.
There's a lot of gatekeeping, yes.
Of information. And I don't know necessarily if it's just because we want to feel like we're the only
ones who succeeded. But
But I truly believe, like Mr. Jimmy, that when we actually take that thing that we've learned, or our friend has learned, or our neighbor has learned, and we share that information with these young men, we all succeed.
We all succeed, and the next generation succeeds. I mean, yes, that's one of the big messages from the book that I'm trying to say, because the community in Mr. Jimmy is an all African American community mired in this poverty, and he's doing his best to show them that and to give them that kind of support. He even has a little reading thing he starts to do after school when he realizes that the kids can't read.
Wow.
It's my, I thought it is a deeply thought out method of how we can help each other and how we can help our communities. And in a time right now where you look at, DEI and names of prominent African Americans are being erased from history books and from the Pentagon and all these other places, who's going to stabilize the situation for us? We can't wait for government for 4 years for government to come back around.
That's it.
We have to stabilize ourselves. We have to make sure the kids get the history.
Yes.
And we have to make sure they're continuing to get their education so they can fight for themselves. And if God willing, we have a Democrat or someone else that's not out to destroy everything the next time around, our kids will be motivated and already moving in that direction. But I think we do need to put an emphasis on academic excellence, because we can do it.
Yeah.
We can do it. I tell kids all the time, I blow their minds. I said, you ever use a GPS in your car or in your phone to get somewhere? And they said, oh yeah. And I said, well, do you know that a black woman is responsible for that? They look at me.
What?
And they go, and I tell them, well, you just look up Gladys West right now, and it blows their mind. And I said, so all of these achievements are yours to have.
Yeah.
And you have so many other avenues aside from, I play sports, so I love sports, but aside from sports, aside from music, aside from, drama, whatever, you have a whole world of things you can do. And you can be successful, and you can make money, and, and you can take care of your family in ways you probably never even thought of.
Absolutely. I know I loved my daughter, who was 5, coming home being excited about learning about the inventor of the potato chip and the super soaker, and
Absolutely.
and then, she was just so excited, and I'm like,
because once they learn that, and particularly at that age, before they learn who people tell them what they can't do.
That's right.
They come into that knowing, you can tell me that, but I know what she did, and I know what she did. I don't know what you're talking about. You should get educated.
Exactly. You should get educated.
So when they come up from that strength, it's hard to take it away from.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It is hard to take it away from.
Hard to take it away from.
Yeah. And it sounded like Mr. Jimmy. He was a mentor. Yes, he was a mentor. And I'm wondering, for young men right now, because like you said, it's our responsibility to make community for them.
Right.
How, if they wanted to seek a mentor, what kind of advice would you give in terms of seeking a mentor, and how to even know and identify when you need one?
Well, I think you need one the minute you start dreaming. So when you get to be probably a teenager, middle school, high school, and you decide whatever you think you might want to do. You can change later, of course. It doesn't have, you don't have to make up your mind.
Yep.
But you can go, and this is the time for you to go to your minister or your teacher or whoever and say, this is what I'm thinking about. Do you know somebody I can talk to? Because let me tell you, that happens in other communities.
Yes.
When my kids were in kindergarten, and they every week they studied a letter of the alphabet. So when they got to the letter C, they went to a court where a federal judge came out in the courtroom wearing his robe and talked to them about this is in kindergarten.
Wow.
So imagine what they were doing all the way
Yes.
up. So if you have that kind of influence and that kind of you know then what's available to you.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
and so those are the kinds of things we need to do for our children. We need to do that if you're in a church community, whatever. And today you can do it by Zoom. So let's just say your boys wanted to talk to Eric Holder, and Eric Holder appears on Zoom and talks to them. These kind of things can happen now. And so once they see people who are in place and doing the things that they want to do, they move in that direction. And also, once they meet those people, a lot of those people, and I've done it myself and continue to do it, want to be mentors. And so we're not going to ask because we don't want to impose ourselves on you. But if you come to me, like the boy who wrote me the letter, then I will participate in your life in that way. So.
That is awesome, and it made me even think about one of the interviews that we did recently with one of our JLD Storytellers young men, and he talked about how he was in a place in his life where he kind of was trying to figure things out. It's like, I'm not quite sure where I need to go.
Right.
And one of the ladies at his church did one of the studies to kind of figure out how your brain and all that stuff. And in doing that, taking the time to do this study with him, he discovered, wow, I am all artistic. Yeah. And so he went into the area of arts and is just flourishing. And
that's
so
fantastic.
I just love that.
Yeah.
All right, so Jeffrey.
Yes.
You have mentioned a young man who's written you and talked about, how one of your books literally changed his life. And I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world that quotes a Mr. Blount book or quote. So I'm wondering, from an author, do you have a favorite quote? And if so, how has it inspired you, or what relationship do you have to that quote?
If the quote is not from a book, it's from my mother.
Wow.
So I had an uncle when I was young. I had all these big dreams of what I was going to do, and we used to watch the CBS Evening News with a man named Walter Cronkite.
Yes.
And at a certain point, I became a cub reporter for my hometown newspaper, and I would say I wanted to be in television, in the news business, and do something like that. And an uncle was telling my mother with me there. And he was saying to our mother, you need to tell him, keep him in his place, he can't do that, and this is not some boy from Smithfield is not going to grow up and do that, and you're just letting him dream these dreams, he's just going to be disappointed and brokenhearted, and you should stop doing that. And so she didn't really respond to him. But when she got home, she sat me down in the kitchen and she said, Jeffrey, somebody's going to do that job. It might as well be you. And when I sat down to direct the Today Show for the first time, with my migraine, I said to myself, somebody's got to do this job. It might as well be you.
Wow.
My mom.
Wow. Good for you, Mom.
Yeah.
Yes, and happy birthday to your dad.
Yes,
coming up. That's
99.
amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow. So you've kind of answered my last question here in the very beginning, talking about your legacy, but I'll come back around to it. I'm wondering, what impact do you hope your books and your career will have and leave on readers and future generations?
Well, like I said, I believe in, I try to be what I refer to as a literary activist. I try to write with a mission, so I'm trying to highlight an issue for my readers to see and to feel and to maybe want to do something about it. So I hope that when they close the books, that they feel motivated to make a change in their lives, because books can change us.
Yes.
I love Margaret Atwood's quote that a word after word after word is power. And books can change us. And I'm hopeful that when it's all said and done, that many people who have read my books have felt inspired. I know that some have. I've even put, if you go to my website and look, you'll see a couple of quotes from people who said they were actually motivated. And one woman said she'd never been inspired by a novel like she had been inspired by this book. So I know it's happening, and long after I'm gone, I hope that people will still read and still be inspired by the book, like I am by Toni Morrison.
Yes. Toni Morrison,
Yeah.
Color Purple forever.
Yeah, and the bluest eye for me. Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, like I say, I didn't get a chance to read Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way, but I am totally inspired to go read that one. I want to read Almost Snow White. I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to get into that one. So I'm excited to have my own quote to send to you, or my testimonial from reading your books. And I know that I will be inspired, because just even this conversation has truly inspired me in so many ways.
Thank you.
So, Jeffrey, how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow you or anything like that? How can they?
Well, if they want to follow me, I'm on Instagram at Jeffrey E. Blount, Jeffrey Blount Author on Facebook. If they want to contact me on my website, there's a contact page, and I respond to everybody.
Wow.
So, those are the places where they can find me, and that's how they can reach me.
Well, you guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. I hope that you feel inspired, one, to go out and read one, if not all, of Mr. Blount's novels. And I just hope that we all see the importance of giving back into our community and encouraging one another and building community to truly support our youth. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so already today, I want you to stop, take a moment, find a reason to laugh, and keep smiling. Until next time, stay blessed.